Rachel Morgan had stared down armed insurgents in the desert, commanded teams through Black Ops missions in 3 war zones, and made decisions that could tilt the fate of nations. Yet none of that prepared her for the sharp, personal sting in her younger sister's voice that afternoon. "If you miss my wedding, Rachel, I'm done. For good." The words weren't shouted, but they hit harder than a sniper's bullet. They hung between them and the boutique's softly lit fitting room, a place that smelled faintly of roses and new fabric. Emily stood before the mirror in her wedding dress, layers of ivory tulle cascading like a waterfall. Her hands were clasped tightly in front of her, knuckles pale against the delicate lace gloves. Her eyes glistened, not with joy, but with something heavier, years of disappointment distilled into a single moment. Rachel shifted her weight, the stiffness in her spine making her seem more like a soldier at inspection than a sister in a bridal shop. That's not fair." "Not fair." Emily spun, her voice cracking. 16 years, Rachel. 16 years of missed birthdays, empty chairs at Christmas, and FaceTime calls from halfway across the world instead of hugs. Do you even know how many times I've heard, "I'm sorry, there's an emergency"? How many times I've had to smile and pretend I understood? The words sliced through Rachel's defenses. She'd braced for anger, maybe even a fight, but this quiet ache was worse. Emily's voice trembled but never wavered as she went on. "Dad's funeral," she said, each syllable heavy. "You missed it for a training exercise. My college graduation deployment. My engagement party. Some mission you couldn't even talk about. I'm getting married once, Rachel. Once. And if you can't be there this one time..." Her breath caught, the rest unspoken but deafening. Rachel took a step closer, her boots soundless on the plush carpet. She had faced interrogation rooms and tense hostage negotiations, but this was different. This was her little sister, the girl who once followed her everywhere, who used to slip handwritten notes under her bedroom door when she was angry instead of saying the words out loud. Rachel began, her voice low. "I promise, no, I swear, nothing will keep me from standing beside you that day. I'll be your maid of honor, and I'll be there from the moment you start getting ready until the last guest leaves. I swear it on Dad's memory." Emily turned back toward the mirror, catching her sister's reflection. Her jaw tightened. "You've made promises before." Rachel's gaze held steady. "This one's different." "Why?" "Because if I break this one," Rachel said, placing both hands on Emily's shoulders, "I lose you, and I'd rather lose everything else in my life than let that happen." The tension in the room softened, slightly. Emily gave a small nod, not forgiveness exactly, but a truce. The boutique fell silent except for the faint rustle of satin as the seamstress made an adjustment to the gown. Outside, traffic hummed by, oblivious to the battle just fought in here. That night, Rachel lay awake in her sparse apartment at Fort Branson. The promise replayed in her mind, looping like a mission briefing she couldn't switch off. In the military, failure had consequences, lives lost, objectives missed. But this, if she failed this, it wouldn't be written in a report. It would be carved into the foundation of her family, maybe forever. She thought about the years that had slipped by like water through her fingers. How many milestones she'd missed. The empty chair at the Thanksgiving table. The phone calls that started with, "I know you're busy." But she had always told herself it was for the greater good. That her work, defending people she'd never meet, was worth the personal sacrifices. But sitting there in the dark, she wondered if she'd been lying to herself. 3 months later, Emily called with the kind of excitement that made Rachel smile, despite herself. "Maid of honor duty update." Emily's voice buzzed through the speakerphone. "I found the perfect dress for you, blush pink, floor length. It'll look amazing with your complexion." Rachel chuckled. "Is this your subtle way of making sure I don't show up in my dress blues?" "Exactly. And don't even think about sneaking a tactical knife into the bouquet." Fine, Rachel said, though she'd already planned to carry at least one concealed blade. Old habits die hard. They talked for nearly an hour, Emily describing centerpieces and flower arrangements while Rachel leaned against her desk, imagining her sister's animated gestures. When they hung up, Rachel felt lighter. She wasn't just keeping a promise. She was building something back, brick by brick. 1 week before the wedding, Rachel visited her father's grave for the first time in nearly 2 years. She brushed leaves from the headstone, the bronze catching afternoon sunlight. "Hey, Dad," she murmured. "Emily's getting married. She looks happy. I'm going to be there, I swear." Her voice faltered, and she glanced around the quiet cemetery. "I know I wasn't here when you needed me, but I'm trying to do better. This time, I'll get it right." The morning of Emily's final dress fitting, Rachel stopped by the bridal shop unannounced. Emily was already on the platform in front of the mirror. The gown fitted perfectly now, her hair loosely pinned as a trial run. She turned, surprise lighting her face. "You came." "Of course I did." Rachel folded her arms, mock serious. "Gotta make sure this dress you picked doesn't make me look like a flamingo." Emily laughed, the sound bright and unguarded. For a moment, they weren't the soldier and the sister left behind. They were just Rachel and Emily, two women who had grown up sharing a bedroom and fighting over the last slice of pizza. As Rachel watched her sister twirl in the mirror, she felt the promise settle deeper into her bones. This wasn't just about showing up to a wedding. It was about proving, to Emily, to herself, that family could come first. That night, back in her quarters, Rachel laid out her plan for the wedding day like it was a military operation. Arrival time, 0700 hours at Emily's house. Roll, assist with hair, makeup, dress logistics. Contingency plan 0. There would be no emergency deployments. No, just one quick mission. Nothing that could pull her away. For the first time in years, she'd drawn a line and dared the universe to cross it. She had no idea how soon the universe would take her up on that dare. The world was still dark when Rachel Morgan's secure phone shattered the quiet. She came awake instantly. No groggy fumbling, no moment of confusion. Years in the field had conditioned her to respond to certain sounds the way others might to a fire alarm. She reached for the device on the nightstand, the faint blue light casting sharp angles across her face. "Colonel Morgan," she answered, her voice steady, as if the time of day didn't matter. "Rachel, we've got a situation." The voice on the other end was Major General Kenton Hale, her commanding officer. His tone was clipped, urgent. "American hostages. Rural province. High-value target among them." As Hale spoke, Rachel's eyes shifted to the open wardrobe across the room. Her dress blues hung neatly on one side, pressed and ready for Emily's wedding. Next to them, wrapped in a garment bag, was the blush-pink bridesmaid gown her sister had picked out with so much excitement. The sight of it hit her like a sucker punch. "Timeline?" she asked, already suspecting the answer would make her stomach knot. "Hostages are scheduled for execution in 18 hours. Rebels are demanding concessions we can't give. The intel team says the terrain is a nightmare, dense forest, high ridges. You're the only one with the experience to lead this extraction." Rachel's grip on the phone tightened. She knew the high-value hostage, Ambassador Robert Clay, a man she'd met years ago at a commissioning ceremony, who had been a friend of her late father. He had 2 children, both under 10. She closed her eyes briefly, seeing Emily's face in the bridal shop mirror. "If you miss my wedding, I'm done. Wheels up in 90 minutes, Hale continued. "I'll have the mission brief on the transport. We need you on this, Rachel. Those kids don't have anyone else." For a long second, the room seemed to shrink around her. The hum of the heater, the faint smell of starch from her uniform, the thrum of her own pulse in her ears. When she spoke, her voice was quiet. "I'll be there, sir." In another part of the city, Emily was sitting in a stylist's chair, a cloud of floral hairspray settling around her. Morning light poured through the salon windows, scattering gold across the mirrors. Her maid of honor, Emily's best friend Kara, was scrolling through photos on her phone. "Your sister's going to cry when she sees you," Kara teased, watching the stylist weave delicate baby's breath into Emily's blonde hair. "She's never seen you this beautiful." Emily's smile was warm, unguarded. Knowing Rachel, she's probably already at the venue making sure the security is perfect. She's been treating my wedding like a classified operation for months. The other bridesmaids laughed. For Emily, the day felt charmed. For the first time in years, she believed Rachel would keep her word. At Fort Branson, Rachel sat at the edge of her bed, phone in hand, staring at Emily's contact photo. It was from the engagement shoot. Emily wrapped in Daniel's arms, both laughing at something just out of frame. Rachel's thumb hovered over the call button. She wanted to tell her sister in person. She wanted to find the words that might make this hurt less. The phone rang twice before going to voicemail. "Em, it's me." Her voice caught, and she had to steady it. "There's a mission. Lives are at stake. I'm so sorry. I love you more than my own life. I'll make this right. Somehow." She ended the call before she could lose her nerve. 90 minutes later, Rachel was strapped into the jump seat of a C-17 transport, her tactical gear cinched tight. Around her, the team ran through final checks, magazines loaded, comms tested, weapons inspected with mechanical precision. She should have been reviewing the mission packet, but her eyes kept straying to the screen of her phone. Photos of Emily at her bridal shower, laughing over cake, hugging friends, posing with a mock bouquet. Sergeant Brooks, her second-in-command and the closest thing she had to a brother in the military, slid into the seat beside her. "You look like someone just told you Christmas is canceled," he said, voice pitched low over the roar of the engines. "My sister's getting married today," Rachel said flatly. Brooks whistled softly. "That's rough. She needs me there." Rachel glanced at him, her expression tight. "But those kids in the jungle need me more." Brooks nodded slowly. "Doesn't make the choice any easier." "No," Rachel said, her eyes fixed on the cargo bay floor. "It doesn't." In the bridal suite at Magnolia Gardens, Emily adjusted the lace hem of her gown for the 10th time. Her phone chimed with a voicemail notification. Her heart leapt. Maybe Rachel was calling to say she was on her way. She pressed play. The voice on the recording was hesitant, almost breaking. "There's a mission. Lives are at stake. I'm so sorry." The phone slipped slightly in her hand. She looked at Kara and the other bridesmaids. "She's not coming," Emily said quietly. "There are children involved." Kara's face softened, but her words were careful. "Maybe it'll be quick. Maybe she'll surprise you." Emily shook her head, blinking rapidly to keep the tears from ruining her makeup. "When Rachel gets that mission voice, it means she's going somewhere dangerous for God knows how long. She's chosen strangers over me again." Outside the suite, the faint sound of arriving guests drifted in, the laughter of cousins, the low murmur of distant greetings. Emily turned back to the mirror, but all she could see was the empty space where her sister should have been. Thousands of miles away, the C-17 shuddered as it began its descent toward the forward operating base. Rachel's mind wasn't on the landing checklist. It was on the fact that, somewhere back in Savannah, her sister was sitting in a gown, waiting for a maid of honor who wasn't coming. She forced herself to focus. If she couldn't be there for Emily, the least she could do was make sure another family stayed whole. But as she checked her rifle and prepared for the mission ahead, a quiet voice in the back of her mind whispered, "What if this is the promise you can't come back from?" The drop zone smelled of damp earth and aviation fuel. Rachel hit the ground running, her boots sinking slightly into the packed soil as she followed Sergeant Brooks toward the waiting transport truck. The air was thick, humid, already clinging to her skin despite the early hour. Somewhere in this sweltering expanse, 4 lives depended on her team's precision. They moved fast. Within minutes, the convoy was weaving through narrow, uneven roads lined with dense, emerald canopy. Birds screamed overhead, startled by the rumble of engines. The mission brief scrolled through Rachel's mind like a litany. Compound, armed guards, hostages in the main building, in and out before dusk. By the time they reached the staging point, the sun had burned away the early mist. The forward scouts returned with a silent shake of the head. "Empty." Rachel's gut tightened. "Say that again." "Place is clear, Colonel," one of the scouts confirmed. 3 guards surrendered without a fight. No sign of the hostages. Brooks was already kneeling beside a satellite uplink, watching drone footage feed onto a small screen. "You're going to want to see this," he said grimly. The video showed a different location, twisting paths through jungle terrain leading to the yawning black mouth of a cave system. The rebels had been moving the hostages every 6 hours, playing a deadly game of hide-and-seek. Rachel exhaled slowly, calculating. The cave was 40 miles northeast, accessible only on foot. 3 hours of hard hiking through ground riddled with tripwires and vantage points perfect for an ambush. Best case scenario, she asked. Brooks didn't sugarcoat it. If the entrance isn't trapped, we're still looking at 8 hours before we can get them out. 8 hours. The wedding ceremony was in 4. Even if the operation went flawlessly, she'd still be in the middle of the jungle while Emily walked down the aisle. For a moment, the mission map blurred in her vision, replaced by Emily's face. The white dress, the promise, the certainty in her eyes when Rachel had sworn she'd be there. She forced her voice to stay level. We move now. The hike was a relentless grind, steep inclines that forced the team to haul one another up by their gear, narrow ledges that crumbled under the slightest pressure. The jungle smelled of wet leaves and decay. Sweat traced hot paths down Rachel's spine. Every minute that passed was a nail in the coffin of her promise. By the time they reached the cave entrance, the light had shifted to the dull gold of late afternoon. A faint, unnatural hum came from inside. Brooks crouched low, scanning the perimeter. Explosives. Enough to seal this place and everyone in it. Rachel's demolitions expert, Corporal Vega, stepped forward, his face already set in concentration. It's motion triggered. Disarming this without setting it off will take at least 6 hours. More if there are secondary fail-safes. Rachel's jaw clenched. She didn't need to check her watch to know she was already too late. The ceremony was starting now. Emily was walking down an aisle lined with flowers, guests turning to watch, her arm hooked through Daniel's. And beside her, Rachel knew it would be Kara, trying to smile through the fact that she wasn't her sister. The image was like a stone in her chest. In Savannah, Emily kept her chin high as she entered the sunlit garden where her guests waited. The scent of roses drifted through the warm air. Daniel looked at her like she was the only person in the world, but when she glanced toward the front, her gaze fell on the empty space where Rachel should have been. The one place in the entire world she'd needed her to stand. Kara took the bouquet from her hands, her fingers squeezing just slightly. A silent message, I'm here. Emily smiled for the guests, but inside, something small and fragile was cracking. Back in the cave, Rachel stepped into the shadows, her night vision flaring to life. The hostages were there. Ambassador Clay slumped against the wall with a gash on his forehead, his wife pale and trembling. 2 children clung to her skirt, their eyes huge. They're alive, Brooks confirmed over comms, his voice low. Rachel crouched near the children. We're here to take you home, she whispered, keeping her tone calm. But when she straightened, the weight of time pressed down harder than the humid air. 8 hours. Midnight extraction, if luck was on their side. The reception would be long over. Emily would be on her honeymoon, starting a new life with the memory of her sister's absence as her final impression from the wedding. Rachel stepped back, her boots crunching against the cave's uneven floor. The sounds of careful hands working on detonator wires echoed behind her. She closed her eyes. Every mission had a turning point, a moment when you decided whether you would push forward, adapt, or retreat. And here it was, staring her down. Brooks joined her, his expression a mix of fatigue and caution. You're thinking about leaving. Rachel didn't deny it. You can finish this without me. You've done it before. This is your op, Brooks said flatly. You walk out now, it'll be career suicide. You know that. Rachel looked at him. Do you have sisters? 3. One younger than yours. You ever break a promise to them? Really break it? Brooks's gaze flickered away. Yeah. Ever get the chance to make it right? He shook his head. No. Lost my youngest in a car accident before I could. Rachel nodded once. Then you understand why I have to go. Her decision landed like a stone in water, sending ripples through every protocol she'd ever followed. She radioed in her orders. Brooks would take over the extraction. She would coordinate from the air, staying on comms until the hostages were safe. It wasn't deserting the mission. Not entirely. But she knew the Joint Chiefs wouldn't see it that way. Vega called out from the entrance. First set stable. Starting on the second. Rachel stepped past him into the fading daylight. Brooks, get them home, she said. His reply was steady. Go keep your promise. As she made her way to the extraction point, the jungle seemed almost to lean in, the shadows stretching long across her path. She didn't let herself think about what came next. Not the helicopter ride, not the chain of travel waiting to get her back to Georgia. All she could see in her mind was Emily's face if she made it in time, and the hollow look if she didn't. She was still thinking about that when the thrum of rotor blades cut through the humid air. The helicopter's arrival was a low roar in the valley, a predator's hum rolling through the dense green. Rachel crouched low as the bird settled on a clearing barely large enough for its rotors. The downwash whipped her hair into her face and sent leaves spiraling skyward. She climbed aboard without hesitation, ducking under the blades, her boots thudding against the metal floor. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of hydraulic fluid and sweat. The pilot glanced back, eyes narrowed in confusion. "Colonel, where's the rest of your team?" "Still on site," Rachel said over the headset. "You've got orders to take me to the Colombian border." Now, the pilot's hesitation was brief, but telling. "That's not protocol." "Neither is what I'm doing." Fly. The helicopter lifted, carving a path through the mist, jungle canopy blurring beneath them. Rachel kept one ear on Brooks's updates from the cave. Charges neutralized, hostages steady but dehydrated. Her other ear tracked the ticking clock in her head, each passing minute like a door closing behind her. By the time they reached the border, night had swallowed the landscape. Rachel transferred to a waiting military transport without breaking stride. She signed flight manifests with a speed that would have made a bureaucrat weep, climbed into a narrow jump seat, and locked her harness. "Destination?" the crew chief asked. "Atlanta," she said, voice sharp. "And keep the engines warm. We're not staying on the ground." The flight to Atlanta was a blur of vibration and muted radio chatter. Rachel's mind replayed Emily's voice on that last ultimatum, calm, almost resigned, like someone who'd already decided the outcome. She imagined walking into the reception hall hours late, the bouquet long since tossed, the dance floor sticky with spilled champagne. Would Emily even want to see her? Or would she look away? Too hurt to bridge the gap? The aircraft's cabin was dim, lit only by strips of red safety lighting. Rachel leaned back, closing her eyes for a moment. The hum of the engines blurred into memory. Emily, 8 years old, wrapping herself in a blanket fort, pretending it was a secret base. The two of them eating cold pizza in their shared bedroom after Mom fell asleep. Her little sister used to believe Rachel could protect her from anything. Somewhere along the way, that belief had withered. Landing in Atlanta at 0200 hours, Rachel was met by a convoy of black SUVs. A young lieutenant stepped forward, offering her a crisp salute. "Ma'am, your escort to Savannah." 4 hours, right?" Rachel asked. 3.5 if we push it," he replied with the kind of grin that came from bending rules. "Push it," she said. The interstate was nearly empty at that hour, the darkness ahead split by twin cones of headlights. Rachel sat in the lead SUV, her fatigue still streaked with dirt from the jungle. Her phone buzzed intermittently with Brooks's updates, charges fully disarmed, hostages secured, moving to extraction point. Relief fought with adrenaline. The mission was safe in his hands. But the other mission, the one that had nothing to do with rank or orders, wasn't over yet. She watched the miles peel away on the GPS display, her heartbeat syncing with the numbers. Highway signs flashed past like silent markers in a race she couldn't afford to lose. In Savannah, the reception was in full swing. String lights glowed in the oak trees, and music spilled into the warm night air. Emily swayed in Daniel's arms to a slow song, smiling faintly at his whispered words. But her eyes kept drifting toward the double doors at the far end of the hall. "You're looking for her," Daniel said gently. Emily's throat tightened. "I know it's foolish, but part of me still thinks she'll walk through those doors." "It's not foolish," he said. "She's your sister." Emily shook her head. "She promised, Daniel. She promised nothing would keep her away. And here we are." The song ended. Applause rippled through the guests, but Emily's heart wasn't in it. She told herself not to expect miracles. And yet, she still felt the ache of a promise left hanging in the air. Back on Highway 16, The sun was beginning to stir, a faint line of gold brushing the horizon. The convoy's tires hummed against the asphalt, the occasional jolt from a pothole shaking Rachel from her thoughts. ETA 15 minutes. The driver called. Rachel leaned forward, spotting the sign for Magnolia Gardens as they took the exit. The venue emerged through a curtain of trees, its lights still glowing in the early dawn. Cars dotted the parking lot, more than she'd dared to hope for. The SUVs rolled to a stop at the main entrance. Rachel's pulse kicked up. She adjusted the strap of her gear bag, took a deep breath, and stepped out. Inside, the band had shifted to softer melodies, the reception winding into its final hours. Laughter drifted from a cluster of tables near the dance floor. Emily sat with Daniel, her head resting lightly on his shoulder. The door swung open. Every head turned. Rachel strode in, boots clicking against polished hardwood. Her fatigues were dust-streaked, her hair pulled into a tight tactical bun. She looked like she'd stepped straight from a battlefield, and in truth she had. The band faltered into silence. Conversations cut off mid-sentence. 200 eyes tracked her as she crossed the room. Emily rose slowly, as if afraid the image might vanish if she moved too fast. "You came," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Rachel stopped a few feet away. "I promised." "No." Emily's voice sharpened, pain pushing past the disbelief. "You promised you'd be my maid of honor. You promised you'd be here for my wedding. You missed the ceremony, the dances, the speeches, all of it." Rachel's face shifted, the weariness settling deeper. "I know. I'm sorry, Em. There are always missions. Always someone else who needs saving." Emily's eyes glistened. "Do you know what it felt like to walk down that aisle without you? To wonder if you were even alive while I cut my wedding cake?" The room held its breath. Rachel took one step closer. "I left the mission." Emily blinked. "What?" "I handed command to Brooks. Flew here because I couldn't break my promise again. My team saved those hostages, but I came because you needed me more." Emily's anger faltered. "You left in the middle of it?" Rachel nodded. "Ambassador Clay's kids, they're safe. But in that cave, I realized I could save every child in the world and still lose my own sister if I kept choosing duty over you." Her voice cracked on the last words. "So I chose you." The reception hall was so quiet Rachel could hear the faint hum of the lights overhead. 200 people stood frozen in their seats, watching the space between the soldier and the bride like it was the center of the world. Emily stared at her sister, the sharp ache in her chest tangled with disbelief. Rachel looked like she'd fought her way through hell to get here, because she had. Her uniform was creased, streaked with dust, and there was a faint smear of camouflage paint along her jawline. But her eyes were different. Softer, vulnerable. "You really left?" Emily asked again, her voice quieter now, but trembling. "I left for us," Rachel said. "Brooks had the mission in hand. He's one of the best operators I've ever trained. The Williams family didn't need me specifically to get out alive. But you," she took a breath, "you needed me. Not the colonel, not the soldier, just me, your sister." Emily's fingers tightened around the bouquet she'd been holding absent-mindedly all night. "You could get court-martialed for that." Rachel gave a small, tired smile. "Probably. But I can live with that. I couldn't live with breaking this promise." The weight of her words pressed through the air. Emily's mind spun with memories, birthdays with an empty seat, milestones celebrated through grainy video calls, nights she'd sat up wondering if her sister was even alive. But here Rachel was, standing in front of her, making herself smaller than rank, smaller than duty, for the first time in years. Emily exhaled, the tension in her shoulders softening just enough to let the next words out. "You're an idiot." Rachel blinked, caught off guard. "You're an idiot for thinking you had to choose between being a hero and being my sister," Emily continued. "You've always been both. I just needed you to remember it." The bouquet slipped from Emily's hand, bouncing once against the polished floor before rolling away. She crossed the space between them in 3 quick steps and threw her arms around Rachel's neck. The hall erupted in applause, some guests wiping away tears, others just smiling through the lump in their throats. The two sisters clung to each other, neither caring about the streaks of dirt and camouflage transferring from one to the other. "I missed your wedding," Rachel whispered into Emily's hair. "You didn't miss my marriage," Emily replied softly. "And that's what matters." Daniel stepped forward, his hand resting lightly on Emily's back as he looked at Rachel. "So, does this mean I get the infamous Rachel Morgan as a sister-in-law?" Rachel pulled back from Emily, just enough to meet his gaze. "That depends," she said, her voice regaining a hint of its old steel. "Are you going to take care of her?" "Every day for the rest of my life," Daniel said without hesitation. Rachel's lips curved into a tired but genuine smile. "Then welcome to the family." The rest of the reception unfolded like something out of a dream. Still wearing her combat fatigues, Rachel was handed a microphone and, without preparation, gave an impromptu maid of honor speech. She spoke about Emily's stubbornness, her kindness, her ability to forgive even when Rachel hadn't deserved it. She spoke of the girl who once left cookies outside her bedroom door after a fight, and the woman who now stood radiant in her wedding dress, promising forever to the man beside her. By the time she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. They danced together to one of their father's favorite songs, swaying slowly under the twinkle of string lights. At one point, Emily laughed and wiped at her cheek, where Rachel's camouflage paint had left a faint smear. Rachel stayed until the very end, helping Emily out of her gown and into travel clothes, just like they had always imagined they would. In the quiet of the bridal suite, they sat on the edge of the bed, talking and laughing like the years of distance had never existed. "What happens now?" Emily asked. "With your career, I mean." Rachel shrugged. "The Joint Chiefs will probably have a few choice words for me. But my CO has 3 daughters. I think he'll understand that sometimes the rules aren't the most important thing." 6 months later, the medal was heavy in Rachel's hands, a polished disc of honor awarded for valor in the successful rescue of the Williams family. The official citation made no mention of her leaving early. On paper, she'd been there until the last moment, seeing the hostages to safety. She stood at the podium in full dress blues, delivering the brief speech expected of her, thanking her team, acknowledging the risks they'd taken. But as her eyes scanned the front row, the medal seemed almost secondary. There sat Emily, 3 months pregnant, glowing, her hands folded over the small curve of her belly. When the ceremony ended, Emily found her sister just off stage. "Nice speech, Colonel," she said with a teasing smile. Rachel grinned, trying to keep it short so you wouldn't get bored. Emily's eyes softened. "I need you to promise me something." Rachel tensed instinctively. Old memories of broken promises flickered like ghosts. "What's that?" "When this baby's born, I want you there," Emily said. "Not as Colonel Morgan, not as some decorated soldier, just as Aunt Rachel." Rachel glanced down at the medal in her hand, then back at Emily's hopeful face. "I promise," she said simply, "and this time I'll keep it." Because some promises, she'd learned, were worth more than rank, more than medals. Sometimes the most heroic thing you could do was simply show up for the people who loved you. That night, back in her apartment, Rachel set the medal on her desk. Beside it was a photograph from the wedding, not the stage portraits, but a candid taken by a guest. She and Emily were on the dance floor, laughing so hard their eyes were closed. Emily's wedding dress marked with faint streaks of camouflage paint. Rachel traced the edge of the frame with her thumb. She had been decorated for rescuing 4 strangers in the jungle, but in her heart, the real victory was something else entirely. She'd made it home,